Good morning. I'm Mark Blank, and this is the Commissioners' Weekly Meeting for Wednesday, January 29th. Commissioner Gilman, any preliminary remarks? Are you ready to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I would vote to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Plant?
I would vote to approve the consent agenda as well.
As do I. Let's turn to proceeding number 10A-042R. Is this really a 15-year-old case, Dr. Fishaber?
Yes, it is. Good morning, Commissioners. Pam Fishaber, Deputy Director of Public Safety. So Commerce City is seeking an extension of time of 2.5 years to June 30th of 2027 to finish the construction and informing the Commission of project completion of a Q-cutter signal at 104th Avenue crossing of UP. The Commission previously granted a 6-month extension of time to December 31st of 2024 to complete this project. As grounds, Commerce City is stating that the complexity of the improvements and design require both Commerce City and the Colorado Department of Transportation to strictly adhere to their procedures and process to prepare and approve required plans. While Commerce City and CDOT say they've been working diligently to meet the December 31st, 2024 deadline, the complexity of the necessary improvements, including the railroad preemption design, railroad signal design, and CDOT permitting and railroad permitting, for the completion of the project is taking longer than is typical. There were no responses that were filed to this motion. So Commerce City has already received and approved, the Commission has already reviewed and approved the plans that were provided by Commerce City on October 16th of 2023, amending its application, for which no responses were filed to that amended application. Commerce City is now apparently stating they need an additional 2.5 years of time for design approvals for this project, which would appear to make changes to the plans and specifications that have already been approved by the Commission. Staff believes that there's insufficient information in this motion to support a 2.5-year additional time that was requested by Commerce City to complete this project, given the grounds that the additional changes and reviews are apparently being made to plans that have already been approved by the Commission. We believe that the Commission needs additional information from Commerce City and other parties in this proceeding as to why these additional changes are being made to plans and specifications that have already been approved by the Commission, and to find out what issues are creating the delays in completing this project. So unless there's no questions, I'm ready for a recommendation.
No, that'd be great.
Staff would recommend that the Commission remand this matter back to the ALJ for further proceedings. It would be appropriate because the ALJ is more familiar with the proceeding and is best able to determine why the parties continue making changes to plans and specifications that have already been approved by the Commission and what issues are causing the continued delays in this proceeding. Staff recommends that the Commission provide the ALJ with the discretion to reopen the evidentiary record as needed to consider new plans and conduct any further proceedings that may be appropriate so we can move this project forward in a more timely manner.
Commissioner Gilman?
Thanks, Dr. Fishaber. I agree.
Commissioner Plant?
I also agree.
As do I, and that could be an ABC order, Dr. Fishaber. So thanks and appreciate it. Proceeding number 24A-0536R, BNSF Railway. Mr. Farrell.
Yes, good morning. Alan Farrell with Rail Transit Safety Section, here today for discussion on a more recent proceeding, 24A-0536R, and I can now proceed if you're ready.
We're ready.
BNSF Railway Company submitted an application to replace flashing lights, gates, bells, and signal bungalow for a crossing at Monarch Road in Niwot in Boulder County. BNSF desires to make the change because the equipment at the crossing is older, and BNSF no longer has spare equipment in the event of a failure. BNSF plans to use constant warning time track circuitry in order to provide a uniform warning time to motorists based on the speed of an approaching train. BNSF states that the most recent traffic volume at the Monarch Road crossing in Niwot as of 2015 is 610 vehicles per day. 2% of this traffic volume is estimated to be heavy vehicles. An average of 2 school buses per day use the crossing. The posted speed limit at the crossing is 35 miles per hour, and there were no 5 or 20-year traffic volumes provided. There are currently 6 trains per day as of 2019. that use the crossing at a maximum timetable speed of 49 miles per hour with no anticipated changes in train volume in the future. There have been 2 property damage only accidents at the crossing since 1975, one in 1986 and one in 1992. BNSF estimates the cost of the project at $303,391. BNSF will cover 100% of the cost of the project. BNSF proposes to start the project on March 31st, 2025, and anticipates being complete with the work by November 30th, 2025. And there were no interventions filed in this proceeding. And if you're ready, have a recommendation.
Since they're paying for it, I can guess your recommendation, but please go ahead.
Very good. Staff recommends the Commission deem the application complete, grant the application, and require BNSF to inform the Commission when the crossing has been upgraded, and require BNSF to file the updated National Inventory Form in the proceeding by November 30th, 2025.
Commissioner Goman,
Thanks, Mr. Farrell. I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree as well.
as do I, and that can be an ABC decision, as you say, deeming it complete, granting it, and requesting additional information when it's done. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair.
24A-0554E and maybe 0557E, sale of street lighting to Windsor and maybe Erie. Mr. Lay, Mr. DeCenso.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. Again, I'm Ron Lay, and myself and Mitchell DeCenso will be presenting on this item regarding the sale of the streetlights to the town of Windsor. Pursuant to Code Section 4D-5105 1 CRS and Commission Rules 1303, 3002A 5, and 3104, Public Service Company of Colorado submitted an application requesting an order from the Commission approving the purchase and sale agreement by and between Public Service and the town of Windsor for the sale of all street lighting assets within the town of Windsor owned by Public Service. The sale does not include distribution poles, distribution lines, or other equipment. Public Service is selling the street lighting facilities at the request of Windsor, and the parties came to an agreement to voluntarily sell and transfer the assets to the town. According to Public Service, there are no detriments to other customers as a result of the proposed sale. The company has also stated that the sale is in the public interest and therefore should be approved by the Commission without hearing pursuant to Rule 1403. Public Service and Windsor executed the purchase and sale agreement effective October 1st, 2024 for an agreed upon price of $1,148,544.35. The purchase price was a negotiated outcome between Windsor and the company and also includes the equivalent of 18 months of operations and maintenance expense. Windsor also agreed to pay the actual costs and expenses of converting the street lighting facilities from Public Service to Windsor. The purchase and sale and associated agreements are contingent upon certain conditions, including Commission approval of the sale. Through this application, the company requested the Commission, 1, approve the PSA or the purchase and sale agreement authorizing the company to sell and to convey ownership of the street lighting facilities to Windsor without further order from the Commission and without hearing, and 2, to grant a motion of an extraordinary protection of highly confidential information. Staff has reviewed the information provided in the application by Public Service and required additional information provided by the company pursuant to section our rules 3104B 1 through 6, and has found them to be in order for the purpose of compliance with provisions of the cited rules. Mitchell DeCenso will, with PC Council, will now speak to the motion for extraordinary protection for highly confidential information, or return it back to me to complete for questions or staff's recommendation.
Mr. DeCenso, anything to add?
Yes. Alongside its application, Public Service submitted a motion for extraordinary protection of highly confidential information pursuant to Rule 1101B. Public Service describes this information as including the number of streetlights being sold under the PSA, distribution pole points of delivery and equipment lists, and the conversion cost estimate provided for the PSA. Public Service contends releasing this data to the public, or even under a claim of confidentiality to other municipal customers seeking to purchase streetlights, would prejudice the company by negatively impacting its negotiation position with other potential streetlight purchasers. I can pause here for your discussion or proceed to offering a recommendation.
If you can offer a recommendation, that'd be great.
Public Services MEP complies with the procedural and filing requirements set forth in Commission Rule 1101. The motion is also unopposed, and the Commission has granted identical protections from related prior proceedings. I therefore recommend granting the motion.
Commissioner Goman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I, and that could be an ABC decision deeming the application complete and granting it and the accompanying motion. So thank you both. Proceeding number 24A-0557E, and hopefully we can just jump to the substance.
It's really identical in form. The difference here is it's the town of Erie in this case, and they negotiated the effective agreement date was November 1st of 2024 for an amount of $827,458.71. Everything else is identical, and I think Mitchell would say the same, but I will let him say his piece on the motion for highly for the MET motion. So
if it's the same, you can just say it's the same, Mr. DeSenza.
It's the same.
Yeah, they filed an identical MEP for this sale as well, and the recommendation remains the same.
Commissioner Goman,
I agree with each of your recommendation.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as does I, and again, that can be an ABC decision deeming the application complete and granting it and the accompanying motion. So thank you both.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Proceeding number 24A-0560E, Public Service Company of Colorado, transmission, Denver area, metro area, transmission, CPCN. Mr. Greenberg and Mr. DeCenzo.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Dan Greenberg of your advisory staff. This case concerns Public Services application for a pair of certificates of public convenience and necessity, or CPCNs, for transmission network upgrades in the Denver metro area. As this is the first time the Commission will be discussing this proceeding at a weekly meeting, I'll present a very brief overview of the company's application and then guide you through discussions about whether you wish to refer the case to an ALJ or retain it en banc, whether you wish to deem the application complete, and any supplemental direct testimony or SDT you may wish to order. Following that, I'll turn the discussion over to Mr. DeCenzo, who will guide you through remaining procedural decisions. If that's acceptable, I'll proceed in that order.
It is.
In this proceeding, Public Service is requesting approval of CPCNs for the Denver Metro Transmission Network Improvement Project, which I'll call the Denver Metro Project, and the Leedsdale-Elati 230 kV Underground Transmission Upgrade Project, which I'll call Leedsdale-Elati Project. It's also asking for the commission finding that the noise and magnetic field strength levels of all facilities are reasonable, that it's asking for approval of a performance incentive mechanism, or PIM, similar to that established for the Colorado Power Pathway, which I'll refer to as the CPP. And it's asking for approval of its proposal to establish an independent engineer to review and comment on the planning and execution of the two projects. The company claims that these projects are necessary to avoid significant overloads on the transmission network due both to the shifts in generation from the state's energy transition and to the significant load growth it's projecting due to electrification and large new loads. The Denver Metro project is comprised of three groups of interconnected substations and transmission lines, which the company refers to as the Daniels Park Path, the Smoky Hill Path, and the Cherokee Area Upgrades. Collectively, these projects encompass reconductoring or rebuilding 15 transmission circuits covering about 115 circuit miles and capacity upgrades in 17 substations. A single new substation is also proposed as part of the Cherokee area upgrades, along with a short segment of new transmission line. These modifications would remove limiting elements and provide substantial increases to the full load ratings of all facilities affected. The company projects a total cost, inclusive of its estimated risk reserve, of $954.4 million for the Denver Metro project. The company proposes to commence construction in November of this year, placing the first upgrade into service in October 2027 and the final upgrade into service in May of 2031. The Leetsdale-Eladi project would rebuild and upgrade a 5.3-mile, 230 kV underground transmission line in central Denver, doubling its capacity and replacing limiting components at 3 substations to accommodate this increased capacity. The company states that the need for this project was identified in advance of the 2021 electric resource proceeding, which the company cites as a source for most of the transmission upgrades included in the Denver Metro project. The company's cost estimate for this project is $218.8 million, including its risk reserve. The company expects to begin construction on this project in November of this year and to have all components in operation by April 2028. In its application, the company proposes a performance incentive mechanism, again, a PIM, similar in many respects to the PIM adopted for the construction of the Colorado Power Pathway. The proposed PIM would share construction cost overruns or savings between ratepayers and shareholders to an increasing degree as the actual project costs diverge from the company's central estimate. And project costs are split into those over which the company has full control and those where the company has limited control. The company's PIM proposal also differs from that adopted in the Power Pathway in some respects, most notably in that it would not establish incentives for timely project completion. The company is proposing to establish an independent engineer, or IE, to review the progress of the projects using the same framework for IE engagement as used in the CPP. Namely, the company would engage the IE, but its work would be overseen by staff. The IE would review quarterly schedule and cost documents from the company and submit quarterly reports to staff. The company proposes to use the scope of work adopted for the CPP, but commits to working with staff to develop and refine final parameters for the IE prior to the conclusion of this proceeding. The company proposes that the costs of the IE would be excluded from the PIM framework and that they would be recoverable through the transmission cost adjustment, as is the case with the IE for the CPP. The company submitted a motion along with its application requesting waivers of the Commission's rules regarding acoustic noise and magnetic field strength. Modeling conducted for most of the facilities to be addressed by the projects indicate that the noise levels will fall under the Commission's designated noise thresholds. In some of the cases where noise thresholds do exceed the Commission's thresholds established by Rule 3206, the modeled noise levels are no worse than those currently created by the existing transmission facilities, which predate the Commission's noise rules. In other cases, the company contends that remediation would either be impossible or exceedingly costly. And in some cases, the company is proposing remediation investments to reduce noise below the relevant threshold. Company's analysis of magnetic field strength was found that while many assets fall below the 150 milligauss threshold, there are a number of assets where field strength is significantly above that threshold, in some cases more than twice the threshold field strength. The company notes that some legacy facilities are already operating above the threshold. In each case where the company identifies an exceedance of the threshold, it cites either physical or cost limitations, in some cases in the tens of millions of dollars, or the need for extended substation downtime as reasons why mitigation of magnetic field strength is impractical. The company requests that the Commission find that the noise and magnetic field levels associated with the projects are reasonable and require no further mitigation. That concludes the case summary. Unless the Commissioners have preliminary comments, I'll now move on to the discussion of who should hear this case, whether the application is complete, and whether to require any supplemental direct testimony.
That'd be great.
All right, so your first decision point on this case is whether you wish to retain this proceeding en banc or whether you wish to refer it to an ALJ. And I'll stop here for your discussion.
So maybe I'll jump in first with some thoughts, and then very curious to hear what you guys are thinking. And just by background, in other filings such as the company's JTS and DPS cases, I've had real concern with the company's underlying demand forecast. As I understand it, however, the demand forecast and load shape behind this filing appear to be largely based on the 2021 ERP. Although it may not be perfect, the company has also filed a PIM based on the prior CPP PIM, and the company's proposal in this case seems more modest than we might have expected from the Phase 2 2021 ERP filing. Given all this and everything else going on, my preference would be to refer this to an ALJ, but perhaps through a written order that raises 3 issues for supplemental direct testimony. First, I'd suggest that we have the company better explain the demand forecast behind the load flow studies and whether it's based on the 2021 Phase 2 ERP, modifications to that forecast, and what the modifications may be, the JTS, or something else. Second, it looked like there were sizable risk reserves in the baseline PIM budget. I'd like to ask the company to explain in more detail the individual components of the reserve and for staff in the ALJ to build a record to help us better understand the risk reserve, what it means for the PIM baseline, and identify what we may have called unknown unknowns in the CPP PIM process. Third, to the extent it hasn't already, I'd ask the company on supplemental direct to rerun its power flow studies, assuming advanced power flow devices were put in place, seeking to limit these investments, perhaps by shifting flows to other substations in the north. Such an approach could perhaps create counterflow that might alleviate some of the overloads that the company's transmission studies identify. I think it's worth raising this question with the company and asking staff and the ITA to consider this possibility. I get that these power flow control technologies may still be early stage in terms of the number of projects and scale of deployment in the US, the tools to effectively understand and model them, and perhaps the credit support behind the leading vendors. At the same time, however, this is a $1 billion plus application. And I think these technologies have shown promise internationally, and that we should ask the company to address the feasibility of using them on the CPP to determine if they could mitigate or maybe even avoid the overloads the analysis finds. Overall, and more broadly, I'm still fairly unhappy with how we do transmission planning, especially the interaction between new generation and transmission investment decision. But that's a discussion for another day. For today, I propose we refer this case to an ALJ with a written order that includes these 3 supplemental direct requests, plus whatever you guys would like to see. But really curious to hear where you're coming from and what you think. So Commissioner Gilman, I'll go to you and see where you're at.
Yeah, well, thanks for that intro. And yeah, I kind of agree. It seems as though sending it to an ALJ would make some sense given the context, although it is a strange world when $1 billion expenditure is not close to the biggest thing on the list that we're looking at. So, I generally agree with the direction there. I agree with you on your supplemental direct areas, especially I think there will be a lot of questions coming and ideally process around better understanding the forecast in the JTS and DSP. I generally have the same understanding as you that the forecasts used for this are older and probably less aggressive, I guess, therefore lacking some of the probably more debatable parts that we'll talk about in the other filings. So that gives me some more comfort to send it to an ALJ rather than keep it with us in the mix with these other proceedings all going on as well. With regard to the PIM, yeah, I appreciate your question on the reserves in there. I mean, in essence, those PIMs have generally been designed to have a deadband as well, which is in part to allow some flex before any penalty or reward. So I would certainly appreciate, the parties taking a close look at the interaction of the size and necessity of kind of both of those things. The other thing I will point out, while it fairly closely mimics the CPP PIM, the one area it does not is they're using the progressive, I guess, rather than landing spot method for how it calculates. This has been hotly debated in many proceedings before, so I'm sure that will get a lot of interest. And, I don't have any specific supplemental direct questions, but obviously it's notable that in this application in particular, there are noise and magnetic field exceedances that I'm sure will be of interest to the parties to really ensure that our actions here are in the public interest. So be interested to see how that all unfolds. Yeah, and I generally agree with you as well with supplemental direct in terms of looking at if there are other power flow options, especially to the north, especially as we see the CPP kind of connecting in further to the north, and are there better ways to kind of utilize those assets? So maybe I would just go to you, Mr. Greenberg, really quickly to see with the chair's description on kind of his interest in looking at those assets, is there any kind of detail or other coloring in you might add for supplemental direct to really ensure we have the most full analysis available to us on those power flow options?
Not really. I would just say that the segments 1 and 2 of the power pathway will be in place, or are scheduled to be in place and operational prior to, well in advance of any of the projects contemplated by these CPCNs. And so I think the idea of looking at the power flow going to the Pawnee and Fort St. Vrain substations, which are connected to segments 1 and 2, is sensible, and as the chair pointed out, might create some counterflow that could offset some of the projects.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure you didn't have anything kind of to add there in your understanding. The only other thing I'll point out about the PIM, as Mr. Greenberg said, there's no timing component. To the extent this is being portrayed as something that is almost immediately needed in terms of overloads on equipment, the company appears to be expressing some urgency here. So I think I'll be very interested to see how this transpires and if the parties are interested in compelling some sort of timing component to that, to the extent that's part of the argument. I'm curious if we will see the need to express some different performance incentive around the timing to ensure that it's able to continue to deliver the services that the application portrays it needs to. So those are my only comments. So generally supportive of all of your points, Chairman.
So I guess before I turn it to you, Commissioner Plant, I think Commissioner Gilman is suggesting we add some language in the referral order, just raising some questions about whether a timing of PIM or other mechanism to keep things moving is appropriate, which I would support. So with that modification to what I said, any thoughts you'd like to share, wherever you'd like to go, sir?
Thanks. No, I had many of the same concerns that you guys have already expressed, particularly as it relates to the risk of overage of 12% combined with a PIM. The only other thing that I would be curious for the company to address is, I mean, we have an awful lot of these proceedings that are going on sort of at the same time that impact each other. And there's a couple $2 billion worth of investments in the distribution system, increasing capacity, which, can be seen as increasing capacity for demand, but could also accommodate generation that might be able to offset some of the costs of bringing power in through these substations. So I'm interested in the company also addressing where locations on the distribution system generation might be targeted to alleviate some of these constraints that we have in the existing system that is being attempted to address in this proceeding.
So would you like to see, are you suggesting we do that as a fourth supplemental direct question?
Yes.
I'm fine with that. Commissioner Goman, any concerns, comments on that request?
No, I'm supportive of that. I would think maybe just a little more detail about having them provide any analysis that they have or can make available on not just kind of generation, but more specifically where, what type, what quantities. I think just to make sure it's as fulsome as possible, if that works for you, Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, also, you know, a part of that is also how this intersects with their ability to manage demand and manage capacity through their what they're proposing in their DSP, which should, you know, have an overall effect of reducing the amount of power that's required to flow through these substations at specific times. And you know, if we can spend, you know, $250 million on the distribution system to avoid $1 billion in a substation upgrades, I think that is money well spent and well saved. And I feel like that hasn't really had a complete analysis with respect to this proposal.
I appreciate you asking that. I think the more we can identify the links between these cases, and the more we can, you know, cite generation and transmission and distribution constrained regions, particularly batteries, you know, the closer we can get to, you know, more optimized investment decisions. I really think putting the batteries outside the Denver metro area transmission constrained region may have been a mistake in the prior ERP. And the more tightly we start looking at it here, the better. So strongly supportive. I don't, Mr. Greenberg, I think that may resolve your other issues. And I guess my request to you would be to do this as a TBC order, since we're all just seeing these requests for the first time today. And I'll certainly commit to turn it as quickly as I can. And if you two could do that as well, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay. There was I thought we'd go through the decision of completeness next.
Is Mr. DeCenza there? Wouldn't that be for the ALJ? But I mean, I'm happy to deem it complete, but does this go to would you like to do it here, or would you like to have the ALJ done?
I think it'd be appropriate to deem it complete, or make that decision now, since it'll likely auto deem prior to getting into the ALJ's hands.
I'm happy to deem it complete. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any concerns?
I do not. I'd be fine with determining completeness.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree as well.
Mr. Greenberg?
Yeah,
anything?
So then I think it is time to pass this off to Mr. DeCenzo for remaining procedural decisions.
Mr. DeCenzo, again, I don't know if the ALJ is going to do all that. So, but
yeah, any additional procedural decisions, including the interventions and omnibus motion, can be handled by the assigned ALJ.
Okay. So does that give you both what you need to draft a TBC decision for accelerated review by the three of us?
It does.
Thank you both, and thank you, Mr. Greenberg, for your help with the supplemental direct. Let's see what's next. Proceeding number 25A-0050SG. Mr. Davis.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ron Davis of the Commission's advisory staff. This morning, I'd like to set up a discussion on the proper noticing by the Commission of an application filed last week by Colorado Natural Gas. CNG seeks approval of certain financing transactions and a related corporate restructuring. CNG explains that its parent intends to refinance its debt in the second quarter of 2025. The refinancing is meant to extend debt maturities and to take advantage of lower interest rates. However, to accomplish this refinancing, corporate restructuring is required. The provisions in Rule 4105 of the Commission's rules that govern securities applications from gas utilities implement Section 40-1-104 of Colorado statutes. Applications for the issuance or assumption of securities must be placed at the head of the Commission's docket and must be addressed within 30 days. If a securities application is continued beyond 30 days, the Commission must enter an order stating fully the facts necessitating the continuance. Based on these procedural requirements, when the PUC receives a narrowly focused application that addresses an issuance of securities or an uncomplicated assumption of securities, it administratively issues a 10-day notice and tentatively schedules a hearing to meet that highly expedited 30-day timeline. In this instance, however, CNG also filed its application pursuant to 40-5-105. That other statute governs utilities' general operating authority and requires Commission approval for a utility to sell, assign, or lease its assets. An application of that sort is normally subject to the Commission's standard procedures as set forth in its rules, including a notice and intervention period of 30 days. Here are some relevant details for you. In 2019, the Commission approved both the formation of Summit LDC LLC as a subsidiary of Summit Utilities, Inc., and the pledge of CNG stock to Summit LDC to be used as collateral for debt. The 2019 application was addressed without hearing as an uncontested matter on that expedited schedule that I just described for securities applications. After Commission approval, CNG's debt was extinguished with an equity infusion, and CNG's capital structure became 100% equity. By this new application, CNG will accomplish its proposed refinancing upon Summit LDC from the 2019 case, becoming a wholly owned subsidiary of Summit Utilities Holdings, another wholly owned subsidiary of Summit created in 2022. Summit LDC will pledge its capital stock in CNG to that new parent, and the pledge will be used to secure long-term debt through the issuance of private placement notes and will retire the existing credit facility that was approved in a highly contested 2022 proceeding. Summit Utility Holdings will further execute a new master credit facility, which will be secured by its equity interest in Summit LDC. CNG states that the proposed changes will not significantly change the company's financial status. It further states that the benefits of the proposed refinancing will not be offset by any adverse factors. And it concludes that the refinancing will not diminish the Commission's ability to establish an appropriate capital structure in the company's next rate case. The notice in question is before you this morning because CNG requests this matter to be resolved by the Commission, quote, as close as possible within 30 days as provided for financings. However, CNG also states that the company recognizes that Section 41-1045 applies to financing requests and not reorganizations, but because the financing arrangement depends on a reorganization, the company wants approval of both the reorganization and the financing within the statutory 30 days for financing. So the decision point is what notice and intervention period the Commission should establish for CNG's application here. And I can make a recommendation if you'd like.
I think we'd very much like that, Mr. Davis.
Okay, I recommend that the Commission construe the request in CNG's application for a decision as close as possible within 30 days as a motion for expedited procedures, including a shortened notice and intervention period of 10 days. I also recommend that the Commission deny that motion. Recent adjudications, including CNG's securities case in 2022 that I mentioned earlier, and its even more recent application for approval of a cost allocation and assignment manual in proceeding number 23A570G, reveal concerns raised by trial staff and by the utility consumer advocate about the appropriate structure within which CNG operates. I therefore recommend the Commission administer this proceeding in accordance with standard application procedures and accordingly that the Commission establish a 30-day notice and intervention period. We have drafted an order denying CNG's request and establishing a 30-day notice and intervention period for your adoption this morning.
Commissioner Goman.
Thanks, Mr. Davis. I agree with your recommendation.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
As do I, and unless there's anything else, I think that could be an ABC decision, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Would you like to, looks like you got three of them here, Mr. Davis.
Right.
Thermal energy development.
Sure. So now I'd like to present a decision opening an M docket to examine whether new rules or legislation are needed to advance thermal energy services in Colorado. House Bill 23-1252 requires the Commission to open a proceeding to make such determinations. Specifically, the Commission is supposed to open this sort of proceeding in early 2025, notwithstanding certain ongoing proceedings and other activities going on related to thermal energy in accordance with both 2023 and 2024 statutes. The order I suggest the Commission adopt would open an administrative proceeding. It would request notice of participation to be filed by any person interested in participating in this proceeding no later than February 28th, and it would further request that participants file responses to certain questions as outlined in the bill. These include the appropriate utility ownership models, the appropriate utility rate structures, any requirements that should be implemented for gas utility-owned thermal energy networks, how the Commission would ensure that any thermal energy network incorporated into a gas utility system provides reliable and resilient service, how the Commission would ensure that new thermal energy networks promote training and transition of utility workers, the method to adjust rate recovery mechanisms to further support the development of thermal energy, and finally, the appropriate methods of cost recovery for thermal energy networks. The draft order would also refer this matter to an administrative law judge for a hearing and disposition. So the decision point for you is whether to adopt this proposed order that was already circulated with you or to otherwise open a proceeding as required by House Bill 23-1252.
Commissioner Gellman.
Thanks, Mr. Davis. Yeah, I am fine with the order and referral. Thank you.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree with that.
As am I, and again, that can be an ABC decision, opening the proceeding consistent with the order circulated and referring it to an ALJ. So thank you, Mr. Davis. And now we go to Senate Bill 24-207, Community Solar Gardens. Oh, you're muted.
So for my final item this morning, I'd like to present another decision opening another M docket. And this one would be to solicit and collect information regarding how best the Commission should fulfill certain obligations under Senate Bill 24-207. That bill caused the replacement of the existing statute governing community solar gardens in Colorado with new provisions to be implemented starting January 1st of next year. The new replacement statute fosters the development of what is now called inclusive community solar. These are CSG facilities having a nameplate capacity rating of 5 megawatts or less. These CSGs interconnect to the distribution system of an investor-owned electric utility, and these CSGs reserve at least 51% of the capacity for subscribers who are income qualified. Senate Bill 207 requires the Commission to take novel actions regarding CSG subscriber organizations and certain protections for CSG subscribers. For example, the Commission must adopt a uniform disclosure form that identifies the information a CSG subscriber organization or subscription coordinator must provide to a potential CSG subscriber. With a focus on income qualified subscribers, CSG subscriber organizations or subscription coordinators are prohibited from using credit scores, utility customer scores, or any utility deposit requirements to approve or deny a prospective subscriber's participation. Prohibited from charging a sign-up fee or a termination fee, prohibited from engaging in misleading or deceptive conduct, and prohibited from making false or misleading representations. Furthermore, a CSG subscriber organization or coordinator must also provide, at the request of the Commission, through another form, details regarding guaranteed discounts that are granted to income qualified subscriber. A CSG subscriber organization and subscription coordinator must also use specific methods to verify income of a prospective CSG subscriber. Notwithstanding all those requirements, however, the Commission must clarify that CSG subscriber organizations, subscription coordinators, or subscribers are not subject to regulation by this Commission. The order I suggest the Commission adopt would open an administrative proceeding to solicit and collect information regarding whether it's necessary for the Commission to modify its existing rules or to adopt new rules. The proposed order would seek feedback on the potential establishment of what I'm calling a Colorado CSG Advisory Task Force. The purpose of the task force would be to address on an ongoing basis updates to Colorado CSG development and more inclusive access to community solar. A specific initial charge for this task force could be the development of those two commission forms I just described. In addition, the proposed order seeks information specifically from Public Service Company of Colorado and Black Hills Colorado Electric regarding their plans to seek necessary approvals from the Commission to implement the requirements in the new statute. And that's specifically in relation to the inclusive community solar capacity to be made available in 2026 and in 2027, and the claims for such capacity from the CSGs. An issue to be addressed here is the expected date of any application filing that's required by the statute. The statute sets a filing date of November 1st of this year, but that filing deadline fails to comport with the deadlines for litigated applications in Section 461095 and is only 2 months prior to the opening of the window when inclusive solar capacity is to be made available. The order also seeks comments on how the Commission should determine the amount of inclusive community solar capacity that both Public Service and Black Hills are required to make available on or before February 1st, 2028, and every year after. And it seeks comments on whether the Commission should adjust any of the requirements related to inclusive community solar specified in the bill, how such adjustment should be implemented, and when such adjustment should be implemented. On a different topic, the order invites comments, suggestions, and recommendations regarding how the Commission should establish a deadline by which Public Service must implement what is called consolidated billing. That's defined as when the CSG bill credit and the subscription charges are also on the customer's monthly electric bill from Public Service. The Commission must further direct Public Service to track the costs associated with implementing consolidated billing and for operating the program so that a fee could be established to be paid by CSG subscriber organizations to participate. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, this order would clarify that CSG subscriber organizations, subscription coordinators, and subscribers are not considered public utilities subject to regulation by this Commission solely as a result of their participation in community solar. So the decision point is whether to adopt the proposed order that has been circulated with you already.
Commissioner Goman.
Yes, I agree, Mr. Davis.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree as well.
As do I, and that can be an ABC order opening the docket and consistent with the order circulated and your recommendation. So thank you, Mr. Davis.
Sure. See you later.
See ya. With that, I think that concludes our agenda. Commissioner Gilman, any final thoughts before we adjourn?
Nothing additional, thanks.
Commissioner Plant.
Nothing additional. Thanks a lot.
Thanks all. With that, we're adjourned. Thanks.